This event. This needs to be. Apparently, I'm also live streaming and on the Zoom. Welcome everyone to this event hosted by UNFPA, the governments of Armenia, Côte d'Ivoire, Ecuador, and Mexico, convened alongside the 69th session of the Commission on the Status of Women. Our session today is entitled A World of Rapid Demographic Change, Keeping Gender Equality and Reproductive Rights at the Core. I'm Leila Sharafi, and I'm the Chief of the Gender, Human Rights, and Inclusion Branch, and I will be your moderator today. I'm based in UNFPA's Program Division, and I welcome you all, including some colleagues who I see here from UNFPA. Before we get started, just some housekeeping points. So we will have interpretation available. We're using modern technology, so we ask you to please use the QR code, which you'll see up on the screen in a moment, for Zoom interpretation. And we ask you to please use your own headphones. For English speakers, there will be some interventions in other languages, so please be prepared for that. When you go to the Zoom, when you've been prompted using the QR code, you will see a globe icon, as many of you are probably used to, for the spoken interpretation, so choose your language. We will have photography and media. As you can see, we have some photographers in the room trying to capture this important moment. But if you prefer not to be photographed, please inform our events team, who you'll see in the center of the room here, and we will be sure to respect your wishes. And of course, we welcome respectful engagement here and invite all voices and speakers to be heard. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to say, as we know, the Commission on the Status of Women is really a perfect opportunity to discuss gender equality. That's its main purpose. But we also wanted to bring into this conversation the context of rapid demographic shifts, which we are definitely seeing all across the world, particularly fertility transitions and population aging. These changes very much impact the real lives of women and girls and everyone, including through care systems, economic participation, and bodily autonomy. We know that from historical experience. And this all requires gender-responsive policies that uphold rights and promote intergenerational equity. This event very much looks at gender norms and how they can shape demographic trends and discuss policy solutions and help us really address some of these demographic anxieties that we're hearing about. We want to express how important it is not to restrict access to sexual and reproductive health and rights, but at the same time show that these fundamental changes in society do give us an opportunity to build even better policies and approaches in countries where these shifts are happening right now, but also might be on the horizon. Today, we'll highlight global good practices, regional experiences, collaboration across government, civil society, and private sector, but also want to look at actionable recommendations, so be really concrete. And this conversation is a perfect convergence of the issues related to the Beijing Platform for Action and the ICPD Program of Action, which we're celebrating 30 years of its anniversaries. So here we are. That's a quick opening, but I am very delighted and honored now to kick into our program and invite our first speaker, who will give us opening remarks and welcome you all. And it's my great pleasure to welcome to the podium Diana Keita, Assistant Secretary General to the United Nations and Deputy Executive Director of Program at UNFPA, who will present to us with opening remarks. Diana, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the podium.
Thank you, Leila. Good day, everyone. Excellency, Minister of Labor and Social Affairs of the Republic of Armenia. It's an honor to have you. Your Excellency, Minister of Women, Family and Child Affairs of Côte d'Ivoire. It's an honor to have you, Madam. Your Excellency, Madam Minister in charge of gender equality from Serbia. Such an honor to have you with us as well. Madam Ingrid Gomez Sarasivar, Undersecretary for Life Free from Violence at the Ministry of Women in Mexico. Is she in the room? Not yet. That's the only name I'm pronouncing, you have noticed, right? Distinguished delegates, esteemed panelists, partners, friends, dear colleagues. It is an honor for UNFPA to join the government of Armenia, Côte d'Ivoire, Ecuador, Mexico in co-hosting this important dialogue on navigating the profound demographic shifts that are shaping our world today. These changes, which include both declining fertility rates and rapidly aging populations, present formidable challenges and transformative opportunities for our shared mission of advancing gender equality and sexual and reproductive health and rights. Currently, almost 70% of the world's population lives in countries that have a total fertility rate below the replacement level of approximately 2.1 children per woman. East Asia is experiencing historically low fertility rate, dipping below 1 child per woman in some countries and 2 children per woman for Eastern Europe. Northern and Western European nations, where robust family policies, good work-life balance, and gender equality had previously stabilized fertility, are now recording further declines. This confluence of trends, coupled with the increased aging of population, marks unprecedented demographic changes. Excellencies, increasingly, demographic anxieties about declining birth rate and aging population are leading to policies that pressures women into having more children. In many cases, we are seeing increasingly restricted access to contraception, sexual and reproductive health services, and comprehensive sexuality education, rather than policies that support rights and choices. This is of particular concern to UNFPA, as it is not only undermines the fundamental human right to bodily autonomy, but may also contribute to unintended pregnancies. We see these demographic anxieties not only impacting women and girls of reproductive age, but also older persons as well, whose rights and contribution are often deprioritized in policy consideration, despite the crucial roles that older individuals play as keepers of ancestral knowledge, caregivers, and community leaders. Demographic resilience is built upon a foundation of rights, equality, and opportunity for all. This means investing in gender-responsive policies that enable women to balance work and family, ensure caregiving responsibilities are shared equitably, and empower individuals of all ages. It means as well ensuring that migration in welcoming countries is managed to ensure that opportunities are created for the migrant without overwhelming existing services for national staff. By shifting our focus from population targets to human well-being, we can create a future where everyone, including older persons, thrive. The question is not whether to respond, but how we respond. And I had this discussion with you, Your Excellency, yesterday. Côte d'Ivoire having 6 million migrant persons in their country. UNFPA, in collaboration with member states, civil society, key stakeholders, is committed to ensuring that our response to these demographic changes is not just reactive, but transformative, centered on gender equality, reproductive rights, and human dignity. The event we are in today builds on key global discussion, including the International Conference on Population Development celebration of 30th anniversary, Global Demographic Diversity Dialogue and Sustainable Development, which took place in Bangladesh last year, and a series of global symposia on low fertility and population aging that Statistics Korea and UNFPA have been collaborating on over the last decade. These dialogues have reinforced the urgent need for demographic policies that uphold rights and choices as essential drivers of gender equality, reproductive rights, and sustainable development. The insights or lessons learned from these discussions underline that addressing demographic shift should not be about controlling population trends, but about ensuring people have the autonomy, the resources, and support to make decisions about their lives and their futures. Today, the right of older persons must also be taken into consideration very seriously. Their contribution to society are seen as valuable asset everywhere. Our event of the day continues this conversation, emphasizing how gender-responsive policy can transform demographic challenges into opportunities for equity and growth. As we commemorate Beijing Plus 30 and reflect on the outcome of the ICPD at 30 process, let's reaffirm altogether our commitment to this groundbreaking agenda. UNFPA remains dedicated to advocating for demographic resilience through integrated, evidence-based, and right-centered approaches. Our panelists, our distinguished panelists, will explore in greater depth the 4 pillars of UNFPA Demographic Resilience Program: data policy integration, human capital investment, system reform, and public support and advocacy. Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, demographic change is fundamentally about people, their rights, and their future. Member states' national policies must challenge outdated social and gender norms, not reinforce them. For every person striving for a future of opportunity and dignity, we must reaffirm collective commitment to policies. UNFPA will continue to champion evidence-based, gender-responsive solutions, ensuring that demographic resilience is not just about macro-level population patterns and trends, but it is about underpinning by justice, equality, and the right of every person to make choices about their life. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Deputy Executive Director DNA, for reminding us that it's really about people having the autonomy, the resources, and the information to make decisions about their lives. That's at the end of the day, the ICPD agenda. And your leadership in steering UNFPA as a thought leader in these issues is very much appreciated. We'll continue now with opening remarks, and it's my honor to invite His Excellency Mr. Narek Bakirchian, Minister of Labor and Social Affairs of the Republic of Armenia, to speak to us about Armenia's commitment to addressing these issues.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it's really an honor to address the events, the co-host of this important dialogue on the demographic change and gender equality. And on behalf of the Republic of Armenia, I extend my gratitude to UNFPA, the governments of Mexico, Ecuador, and Côte d'Ivoire, and all other stakeholders for convening this platform. The urgency for our discussion cannot be overstated. As aging populations, migration shifts, and climate disruptions reshape societies, we must ensure the equality remains the compass guiding our responses. Armenia, like many other nations, grapples with the dual pressures of declining fertility rates and accelerating aging. We stand before you as both a witness to an active participant in addressing demographic transitions. Our recent adopted demographic strategy for 2024-2040, a blueprint for transformative action, recognizes that human capital, not mere population numbers, is the cornerstone of sustainable growth. I want to say that our strategy of demography, we created in partnership with key prominent research centers in Europe and in other parts of the world, mainly with the Wittgenstein Center of Population Studies in Vienna, with the Prague cooperation with the Prague University, the Charles University, and with, of course, very, very close cooperation with UNFPA. And working on the document, we understood one thing, that not only we have problem with demographic policies because of the demographic shifts, but we understood that also we lack experts in demographic studies who would help the governments or who be important agents within the government, in a civil society, in NGOs, etc., to be committed to today's decisions. And to solve this problem, in cooperation with UNFPA in Yerevan State University, we created a Center for Demographic Studies and started to cooperate with different international centers, foundations. And now, using this opportunity, I want to ask everybody in this room that we are very open and would be happy to cooperate with you to build capacity of that center for the future. Coming back to our journey on demography strategy, I want to share some insights. The gap between desired and actual fertility rates is stark in Armenia. The current fertility rate stands at 1.88 children in our average and would stagnate at this level without an intervention. This disparity stems not from cultural preferences, but systematic barriers, unequal care burdens, workplace discrimination, limited access to reproductive health care, regional security issues, migration, etc., during which also the forcible displacement of Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh and the women constituted the majority of the forcibly displaced population. Our strategy responds by investing in universal childcare, extending parental leave, and dismantling gender stereotypes that confine women to primary caregiver roles. We believe that our role as government is not to dictate family size, but to eliminate the barriers that prevent people from realizing their reproductive aspirations. Secondly, we embraced harm reduction strategies that safeguard public health, social stability, and economic sustainability to build a resilient demographic future. By investing in accessible healthcare, disease prevention, inclusive social policies, and proactive intervention programs, we aim to mitigate the risk associated with premature deaths, disability, and aging populations. Thirdly, our rapidly aging population presents its own challenges. In 2022, almost 23.7% of Armenia's population was over 60, compared to just 40.3 in 2001, a trend mirrored globally. Rather than viewing aging as a fiscal burden, we are pioneering models of active aging through lifelong learning programs and redesigned pension system that reward late care contributions. We are also working with different international foundations, for example, the Evolution Foundation in Saudi Arabia, to have programs which will support the longevity, because we consider older elderly population as a value, and we are providing them opportunity to continue to positively act and positively add value and have impact on GDP. Simultaneously, Armenia's demographic landscape is shaped by waves of migration, and the migration dynamics in Armenia present particular complexities. Yet our strategy reframes migration not as a loss, but as a dynamic resource. By creating incentives for high-skilled repatriation and engaging our diaspora, we aim to transform brain drain into brain circulation. You know that Armenia's population is approximately 3 million in Armenia, more than 3 million in Armenia, but we have approximately 10 million Armenians living other parts of the world, only 2 million in US. Last but certainly not least, the COVID-19 pandemic laid bare a universal truth. Care work sustains economies, yet remains undervalued. In Armenia, women on average spend 58.5 hours weekly on care, double the time men invest. The imbalance stifles labor force participation. Our response focuses on providing an effective and comprehensive childcare system that supports human capital development, allows parents to share their responsibilities, and give them opportunities for flexible education and employment. The lessons from Armenia's experience are clear. Demographic resilience requires a long-term, right-based approach that addresses structural inequalities. As we gather here today, I invite us to move beyond the narratives about demographic decline or growth. Instead, let us focus on creating societies where demographic decisions, whether to have children, when to have them, and how many to have, are made freely without economic coercion or gender discrimination. In closing, let us remember that demographic resilience is not a spreadsheet exercise. It is the art of weaving policies with empathy, foresight, and an unshakable commitment to equality. Armenia stands ready to collaborate, learn, and lead in this endeavor. Together, we can build futures where every birth is chosen, every elderly man honored, and every migrant's journey a bridge, not a rapture. Thank you.
Your Excellency, I don't know how else better we could have said it. You really summed it up so well. And thank you for sharing the very concrete examples from Armenia, particularly universal childcare, parental leave, and really about eliminating barriers so people can make their fertility aspirations a reality. Thank you so much. That was really a perfect way to open this. And now it's my honor to invite Her Excellency, Ms. Nassiniba Touré, Minister of Women, Family, and Child Affairs of Côte d'Ivoire. Thank you so much, Her Excellency, for highlighting the work you're doing there in Côte d'Ivoire and supporting the rights of women. I invite you to the podium.
Madame la sous-secrétaire de l'UNFPA, Madame Djene Keïta, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames et Messieurs les ambassadeurs, distingués invités, Mesdames et Messieurs, la question démographique a toujours conditionné la structure des politiques publiques, tant du point de vue du substrat économique que dans le cadre de la mesure des effets sur les différentes couches de la population. À ce propos, la répartition naturelle entre hommes et femmes pose l'équation d'une prise en compte des différenciations impliquant la dimension du genre. Sous cet angle, cette perspective que je souhaite partager avec vous sur l'expérience de mon pays, la Côte d'Ivoire. Commençons par les données. De 3 millions d'habitants en 1960, la taille de la population ivoirienne a atteint 29 389 150 000 habitants, selon le recensement général de la population de l'année 2021. Cette population est composée de 52,2% d'hommes et de 47,8% de femmes, soit un rapport de masculinité de 109%. Plus de 3 individus de la population sur 4, donc 76,6%, sont âgés de moins de 35 ans. L'âge moyen étant de 23 ans. Les moins de 15 ans représentent à eux seuls 38,2% des effectifs et les 15 à 64 ans représentent 59,2% et les 65 ans et plus 2,6% de la population totale. La transition démographique demeure encore lente avec un indice synthétique de fécondité qui est passé de 5,3 enfants par femme en 1994 à 4,3 en 2001. Ces niveaux de fécondité encore élevés s'expliquent par les comportements, les attitudes et les pratiques liées à la procréation. En effet, une proportion importante des femmes s'engagent encore dans des unions précoces. Parmi celles âgées de 25 à 49 ans, 11% étaient en union avant l'âge de 15 ans et 31% avant l'âge de 18 ans. Cette situation entraîne un taux de fécondité élevé chez les jeunes femmes de 15 à 19 ans, estimé à 96% en 2021, ce qui contribue au maintien d'une fécondité globale élevée. Concernant l'usage de la contraception, 21% des femmes en union de 15 à 49 ans utilisaient une méthode contraceptive en 2021, dont 18% optaient pour une méthode moderne. Cependant, les besoins non satisfaits en matière de planification familiale demeurent encore très élevés, affectant 22% des femmes en union dans cette tranche d'âge, principalement pour l'espacement des naissances. Soulignant la forte demande pour des services de contraception plus accessibles et adaptés, ce sont 16%. En dépit de leurs efforts pour participer au développement, les femmes se heurtent très souvent aux contraintes liées aux stéréotypes sexistes, à la persistance des pesanteurs sociaux, culturels et autres discriminations qui se traduisent par un fort taux d'analphabétisme. 57% des femmes en 2021 étaient analphabètes, selon le recensement de la population. De mauvais indicateurs de santé, le niveau élevé de mortalité maternelle, 385 décès sur 100 000 naissances vivantes, et l'utilisation insuffisante des méthodes contraceptives modernes à hauteur de 21%. Une persistance des violences basées sur le genre et les pratiques néfastes. 36% des femmes de 15 à 49 ans ont déclaré avoir subi à un moment quelconque de leur vie des actes de violence physique. Parmi celles en union, une femme sur 4 déclare avoir été victime de violences physiques de la part du partenaire. Les mutilations génitales féminines touchent 37,7% de femmes. Un faible accès aux facteurs de production, notamment la terre, puisque les femmes sont dans le domaine de l'agricole. 70% de la main-d'œuvre agricole dans notre pays est féminine. En 2015, sur 116 certificats fonciers délivrés, seulement 12% des bénéficiaires étaient des femmes, contrariant le processus d'autonomisation des femmes en milieu rural. Une insuffisance de l'appui à l'entrepreneuriat féminin, une faible capacité des femmes à affirmer leur leadership dans bien des domaines liés à l'insuffisance de compétences, d'accès au financement, aux technologies et au marché. Mesdames et messieurs, chers invités, face à ces défis auxquels les femmes sont confrontées, le gouvernement a mis en place un cadre législatif, réglementaire et juridique adéquat et a ratifié de nombreux instruments internationaux et régionaux, entre autres la déclaration de Beijing et la Convention sur l'élimination de toute forme de discrimination à l'égard des femmes en 1995. Aussi, pour lutter contre les pratiques néfastes portant atteinte à l'intégrité de la femme, la loi numéro 98-757 du 23 décembre 1998 portant répression des mutilations génitales féminines a été adoptée. L'amélioration du cadre légal de protection des droits des femmes s'est aussi traduite par l'adoption d'un nouveau code pénal le 18 juin 2019, prenant en compte de nouvelles discriminations telles que le viol conjugal et les violences domestiques. Sous l'égide du président de la République, son Excellence M. Alassane Ouattara, la loi numéro 2016-886 du 8 novembre 2016 portant Constitution de la République de Côte d'Ivoire marque une avancée historique et notable dans la promotion des droits des femmes. À travers cette Constitution, l'État assure la promotion, le développement et la protection de la femme. Par ailleurs, la Côte d'Ivoire œuvre à promouvoir la parité entre les hommes et les femmes sur le marché de l'emploi et encourage la promotion de la femme aux responsabilités dans les institutions et administrations publiques ainsi qu'au niveau des entreprises. Aujourd'hui, ce sont 34% de petites et moyennes entreprises qui sont dirigées par les femmes. La stratégie nationale d'autonomisation des femmes en Côte d'Ivoire 2020-2030 a été élaborée avec pour objectif de promouvoir l'égalité des chances, l'équité et la pleine participation des femmes à la prise de décision. En plus de ces nombreux tests énumérés, d'autres lois sont à noter, telles que la loi 2019-870 du 14 octobre 2019 sur la représentation des femmes dans les assemblées élues, imposant aux partis politiques un quota de 30% de femmes sur les listes des candidats aux élections législatives et aux élections locales, suivi du décret d'application qui a eu un impact très positif sur le nombre de femmes élues aux élections municipales en 2023. Il faut ajouter aussi l'adoption de la loi 2019-573 du 26 juin 2019 relative aux successions, prévoyant une amélioration des droits successoraux du conjoint vivant. Le gouvernement a œuvré à l'inclusion des femmes dans le processus de développement, en leur assurant notamment une participation équitable des croissances et en renforçant la protection des enfants et l'épanouissement des familles. Ainsi, la proportion de victimes de viols identifiées et prises en charge sur le plan médical dans les 72 heures avec l'appui de la SMU est passée de 54,4% en 2021 à 57,47% en 2023. La proportion de femmes et de filles de 15 ans ou plus victimes de violences sexuelles infligées au cours des 12 mois a enregistré une régression de violences sexuelles, une régression passant successivement de 37,10% à 35,80% de 2021 à 2023. Au plan de l'éducation, la loi constitutionnelle a renforcé la loi à travers la loi numéro 2015-635 du 17 septembre 2015 portant politique de scolarisation obligatoire de 6 à 16 ans dans l'enseignement de base, ce qui a eu un impact sur la scolarisation de la petite fille et sur l'autonomisation générale de la fille. Alors, cette loi a permis en 2023 de passer à un taux de scolarisation de la petite fille de 109% comparé aux petits garçons. Toutefois, bien que des progrès aient été réalisés sur le plan juridique, des défis subsistent. Ils portent principalement sur l'accès des femmes aux ressources économiques et la lutte contre les stéréotypes du genre et les normes socioculturelles. Aussi, en matière de représentativité des femmes aux instances de décision dans les assemblées élues et dans l'administration publique, la proportion des femmes reste faible au niveau électifs, soit 12% de femmes à l'Assemblée nationale et 15% au Sénat. Pour faire, le gouvernement ivoirien, à travers son prochain plan de développement 2026-2030, s'engage à accentuer la promotion de l'égalité des genres et l'autonomisation des femmes, notamment à travers le développement et le renforcement du capital humain féminin, l'amélioration de l'accès des femmes aux opportunités économiques et le renforcement de l'autonomie des femmes et la protection de leurs droits légaux. Je voudrais remercier le FNUAP de nous avoir associés à cette session de travail. C'est sur cette note que j'espère que les travaux de cette session déboucheront sur des perspectives d'accélération sur le changement démographique et de politiques tenant compte de la dimension genre. Je vous remercie.
Excellency, thank you so much for shedding a light on what's been happening in Côte d'Ivoire, women's participation and equality in the market, equal opportunities. All of this requires strong legislation and policies at the end of the day if we want to build human capital. So thank you very much for telling us that story. And now I am pleased to invite Ingrid Gomez Sarasibar, Vice Minister for Issues of Violence Against Women in the Ministry for Women of Mexico. Thank you so much for being here and really appreciate you. Please come to the podium. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias. Buena tarde. Con el gusto, además de representar a México, pero además de enviarles un saludo de nuestra primera secretaria de las mujeres. Estamos estrenando este ministerio, no existía, y con la llegada de la presidenta Sheinbaum se inauguró la Secretaría de las Mujeres el 1 de enero de este año. Así es que pensar en este mundo de cambio demográfico acelerado nos desafía, como aquí bien han dicho nuestras colegas, y agradecemos a la UNFPA por siempre ponernos en estos temas en agenda, cómo hacemos para mantener la equidad de género y los derechos reproductivos al centro en este mundo cambiante. Quisiera iniciar diciéndoles que en los últimos 6 años México ha optado por una política social que atiende a las causas. Este ha sido un sello de nuestro movimiento y las causas, atender a las causas es decir, voltear a ver la pobreza, las desigualdades, la exclusión, bajo el principio de que por el bien de todas y todos, primero las y los pobres. Atender las causas de la desigualdad ha sido el centro de la política de bienestar y de la política de justicia social del gobierno del expresidente Andrés Manuel López Obrador y de nuestra presidenta Claudia Sheinbaum. Este proyecto que refuerza la justicia social, enfatizando los esfuerzos en el bienestar y avance de las mujeres de la mano con esta presidenta, ha señalado como retos, por un lado, eliminar las brechas de desigualdad y erradicar todas las manifestaciones de violencia contra las niñas, las mujeres y las adolescentes. Es un desafío enorme, pero estamos comprometidas con ello. Y de ahí que la prevención y atención de las violencias contra las mujeres y adolescentes se vuelva una cuestión de Estado y un problema poblacional nacional que nos convoca a todas las comunidades a construir un profundo cambio cultural. Se dice fácil, pero no lo es. Requiere procesos continuos, sostenibles en el tiempo y también en los presupuestos de largo aliento. Por eso es que en mi país estamos diciendo que estamos construyendo una política demográfica feminista. ¿Qué quiere decir? Que promovemos el derecho a la libertad, la integridad y el bienestar pleno de las mujeres, las adolescentes y las niñas, impulsando los avances en la protección de los derechos sexuales y reproductivos de las mujeres. El gobierno de México considera que el trabajo institucional para el cambio cultural se impulsa con una sexualidad plena, una sexualidad libre de violencias, una vida también libre de violencias y que debe ocurrir desde las primeras etapas del desarrollo de las personas. Este gobierno del segundo piso de la transformación, que decimos en mi país, apuesta por una política demográfica feminista que atienda las causas de los principales problemas poblacionales a los que nos enfrentamos las mujeres. Además, se cuenta con una institución dedicada, el Consejo Nacional de Población, dedicado a marcar la hoja de ruta en materia de la política poblacional. En la actualidad, en mi país, como seguramente en el mundo, porque eso dice el proverbio árabe, que las mujeres sostenemos la mitad del mundo, en mi país, en México, somos la mitad, un poquito más de la mitad de la población. Y esta razón nos empuja a construir, a mirar con estos lentes violeta de perspectiva de género, esta política demográfica que permita enfrentar los retos que se asocian, uno, a atender las presiones de atención obstétrica en los sistemas públicos de salud, con especial énfasis en la mortalidad materna, ampliar la cobertura de seguridad social y de vivienda. Hay un programa que ha lanzado la presidenta de Vivienda para Mujeres. Promover políticas de cuidados, erradicar uniones forzadas que desgraciadamente todavía suceden, disminuir las desigualdades territoriales que definen el acceso a derechos de las mujeres, el agua, la gestión del agua. Yo siempre digo que vengo de un pueblo en el sur de la Ciudad de México donde no tenemos agua por la red. ¿Quiénes somos las que gestionamos el agua por la red pública hidráulica de la ciudad? Las mujeres. Tiene un efecto directo sobre nuestras vidas la gestión de los servicios. También necesitamos trazar estrategias de atención a la migración y la movilidad irregular que tenemos las mujeres, no solo hacia afuera de nuestro país, sino hacia adentro, y definir como prioridad, y esto es compromiso del gobierno, como prioridad el derecho de las mujeres a decidir sobre nuestro propio cuerpo, el primer territorio que habitamos. De ahí que sea muy importante la despenalización del aborto y la actuación del sector salud frente a la violencia sexual. A la fecha, 20 de las 32 entidades federativas de los 32 estados han despenalizado el aborto a través de las reformas a sus códigos penales locales. En septiembre del 2023, la Suprema Corte de Justicia, que es el máximo órgano en términos de justicia, declaró inconstitucional la penalización del aborto y criminalización de las mujeres y el personal de salud que acompañan estos servicios, porque violenta los derechos humanos de las mujeres con la capacidad de gestar. También nos resulta fundamental ofrecer una cobertura de políticas públicas al derecho de las mujeres a decidir sobre su cuerpo, por lo cual hemos emprendido esfuerzos como ofertar en los servicios de salud públicos federales los servicios de aborto seguro. También hemos lanzado los lineamientos técnicos para la atención del aborto seguro en México, que establecen la atención de unidades de salud para las mujeres, para las adolescentes que requieren esta práctica con perspectiva de género, interseccional, pero también intercultural. En enero del 2025, este año, el organismo encargado de la seguridad social de los trabajadores al servicio del Estado publicó que se garantiza la aplicación del procedimiento para la interrupción legal del embarazo. Esto es un hito, es la seguridad social de los trabajadores al servicio del Estado. Y el Instituto de la Seguridad Social, el ISSSTE que le llamamos, está garantizando a las trabajadoras, pero también a sus hijas, que puedan realizarse un aborto seguro en sus clínicas y hospitales. También la otra línea tiene que ver con la disminución y atención a los embarazos adolescentes y la erradicación de los embarazos a niñas. Para el gobierno es importantísimo enfrentar las causas que producen estas desigualdades, estas exclusiones y estas violencias. De ahí que la educación nos parezca un campo estratégico en la vida social, pues permite promover prevención, pero también cambios sociales y actuar a nivel colectivo en comunidades. La comunidad escolar, la comunidad de padres y madres de familia, las comunidades alrededor de las escuelas. El gobierno de México, además, lo mira como un problema con amplias brechas de desigualdad, el embarazo en adolescentes, y queremos decirles que a partir del 2023, el Sistema Educativo Nacional incorporó lo que le llamamos la nueva escuela mexicana, y en estos contenidos de la nueva escuela mexicana, desde primaria, que es el elementary, ¿no? School, estamos brindando contenidos en educación integral en sexualidad, también con un enfoque intercultural. Somos una nación muy diversa, con múltiples poblaciones indígenas, y hay que ubicar este enfoque intercultural como parte de los contenidos en educación integral en sexualidad. ¿Qué resultados hemos tenido? Destacamos una disminución, no nos sentimos a gusto, pero la destacamos, una disminución importante en la tasa de abandono escolar de mujeres adolescentes e incluso niñas por embarazo, y un mayor uso de métodos anticonceptivos entre adolescentes. Esto nos lleva a un reto, a seguir garantizando servicios amigables en materia de educación integral en sexualidad a las adolescentes, y a que tengan disponibles en las clínicas y en los servicios de salud del Estado métodos anticonceptivos. Entre 2015 y 2023 hemos disminuido la tasa específica de fecundidad adolescente al 16.7%. Al descender de 72.4 nacimientos por cada 1,000 adolescentes entre 15 a 19 años. La verdad es que este ha sido un gran desafío, porque hay que desafiar incluso a violencias que siguen siendo muy naturalizadas, muy enraizadas en nuestras sociedades. Por eso es importante que pues todos los servidores públicos apliquemos una norma oficial que existe en el país, que es la NOM 046, para la atención de las violencias en el sector salud. Hemos sido enfáticas en identificar el embarazo infantil como un problema asociado, siempre asociado a la violencia sexual. No podemos hablar de consentimiento cuando hay una disparidad en el tema del embarazo infantil. No son niños embarazando niñas, son adultos embarazando niñas, y eso tenemos que romperlo de raíz y hacer un compromiso para que eso no suceda. No es algo que venga por usos y costumbres de las comunidades. Eso es un delito, y no solo es un delito, sino además rompe la vida y los sueños de un adolescente o una niña, pero también de una comunidad. De ahí que la Estrategia Nacional de Atención y Prevención del Embarazo Adolescente haya sido central en esta estrategia. Hoy tenemos en los 32 estados un componente importante de trabajo en esta estrategia estatal que obliga a que todas las autoridades estemos atendiendo el fenómeno, pero ojo, con perspectiva de niñez, con perspectiva de interculturalidad y sobre todo con perspectiva de género. Desde finales del 2024, la Secretaría de Salud además ha reforzado los procedimientos orientados a la atención integral de niñas y adolescentes. Sí, niñas y adolescentes que recurren a la interrupción voluntaria del embarazo, que esta se realiza en las unidades médicas a mujeres, y existe la obligatoriedad oficiosa para implementar esta norma de la que les hablaba cuando se trata de niñas, porque estamos hablando de niñas y de adolescentes víctimas de violencia sexual con un embarazo en curso. Allí la interrupción se aplica de manera voluntaria, sin mayor trámite que dar fe y creer lo que nos está diciendo la niña, la adolescente. Se ha identificado además que la mayoría de embarazos, consecuencia de violación o de violencias sexuales, ocurren en mujeres menores de 20 años. De hecho, entre el 2017 y el 2022, la proporción de estos embarazos atendidos en la Secretaría de Salud aumentó. En 2022, 9 de cada 10 embarazos era el resultado de una violencia sexual correspondiente a niñas y adolescentes. Hoy tenemos esa tasa más abajo. Y bueno, consideramos que estos espacios nos dan la posibilidad también de hacer esta política demográfica en colectivo, hablar con otras colegas en otras latitudes para acompañarnos, para tejer redes, para conocer prácticas que son exitosas en la región y sobre todo consideramos además que hay que seguir difundiendo las políticas, el rechazo a la violencia, nuestra pelea frontal con la violencia sexual y que en ese sentido midamos como un indicador de violencia sexual el embarazo infantil. Y esto ha sido importantísimo, pues porque justamente nos puede brindar un indicador para saber cómo podemos tomar mejores decisiones en el ámbito de salud y en el ámbito de la educación. Así es que mi participación hasta acá, pero con un poco con el compromiso y la vehemencia de alguien que trabaja por los derechos de las mujeres y las acompaña todos los días, un poco para invitar que efectivamente hagamos política poblacional feminista con perspectiva de género y de derechos humanos. Muchas gracias y muchas gracias a UNPA.
Thank you so much, Vice Minister. That was so powerful. Thank you for showing us about one of the works that has been happening in Mexico, particularly links between GBV, women's choices, opportunities, bodily autonomy, and the feminist demographic policy. I would like to now invite our distinguished panelists to join us back in the audience, and please join me in a round of applause for our distinguished panelists from Armenia, Côte d'Ivoire, and Mexico.
Sorry, I'm late.
Oh, no, don't worry.
I have a.
Yes, it's crazy. I hope you're okay. Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna invite you with your little short bio and then I'll invite you to come up. Okay, great. All right. Now we go to our keynote speaker who will frame all of this for us in a very compelling way. I'm so pleased to welcome Jennifer Schuba, who is the president and CEO of Population Reference Bureau and a leading expert in political demography with specialization in aging, fertility, environment, and research translation. Through her leadership at PRB, Dr. Schuba advances the organization's mission to leverage population data for informed policies and programs that improve global well-being. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming to UNFPA. Please come to the podium. The floor is yours.
Thank you. It's an honor to participate alongside the distinguished representatives from Armenia, Côte d'Ivoire, Ecuador, and Mexico. Thank you to UNFPA colleagues as well. In these very brief remarks, I have the tough task of trying to pull some things together and frame what is a very global phenomenon, but looks very different in different places. And so I thought that I would address two questions to help frame our discussion. One, why has fertility decline spread across the globe? And the second is, what's at stake for women as population dynamics change? The answer to the first one tells us a lot about the second one. So we'll start with the power of population. I know some of you in the room, and when most of us started studying and working in this population field, the predominant concern globally was high fertility and rapid population growth, and yet we're not that old. There's still countries and areas, of course, within countries that have high fertility rates, but the trend is downwards. Globally, the average woman has just over 2 children in her lifetime. The transition from high to low fertility rates has been faster and more far-reaching than in the past. If it isn't in your country yet, you're either eagerly awaiting it for hopes of some economic demographic dividend, or you're dreading it. When we understand the factors that have driven this shift in fertility rates, we do start to understand what's at stake when someone who has the power to make decisions doesn't like those trends. The biggest factor driving the shift from high to low fertility is modernization, a big label, but think higher standards of living, more education, increase in girls' primary and secondary school enrollment, more opportunities for women to earn money outside the home, shifts in preferences to smaller families with a greater investment of time and money per child. Now, these are things that the global development community has been working to achieve for decades and were nearly universally thought of as good. But as fear of demographic change takes hold, they're at risk. Modernization obviously is not a prerequisite for fertility declines, because we know that below replacement fertility rates clearly aren't things that happen just in the richest countries worldwide. That's how we also know that, secondly, a driver of this shift from higher to lower fertility rates is the state, the government. The state policy matters. The state can, of course, lead the initiative on education. States can lead in family planning and reproductive health infrastructure by investing money, building clinics, training staff. States can put in place carrots around what they deem a desired family size, or they can wield sticks, which we hope they don't, but of course we know that's the case. But how governments prioritize these population issues and the connected ones can help determine the success. And then, of course, the third factor connected to the others. Access to contraceptive technology has been crucial in allowing women to have the number of children they want when they want them. So bringing those second two pieces together, we're at a pivotal moment when we want to preserve our progress towards access and rights and choice. And the fear around the challenges that come with lower fertility put that at risk. They put at risk that powerful actors will continue to see educational and income earning opportunities for women as an aim. They put at risk that governments will continue to invest in making sure that those opportunities are available. And they put contraceptive access and reproductive rights at risk. Now, even if we have this shift towards lower fertility rates, demand for family planning services remains high due to large cohorts of reproductive ages over the coming decades. I mean, just for fun, I was pulling up the population pyramids of the 4 countries who are here today, and it's obvious when you look at these that, you know, there's still a lot of reproductive age women in the decades to come in Côte d'Ivoire, of course, for the foreseeable future. So what's at risk in countries where fertility rates are still well above replacement level, even if they've been declining, I think is disinvestment. I mean, not necessarily specific countries to call out, but there's this general sense that there could be a disinvestment in family planning out of a fear of population aging. What drives the fear? Why does this issue garner a spot on government agendas? We've really seen this pick up, particularly in the last few years. Well, it gets a spot because of the same reason that high fertility rates did: connections with the economy. I think it's crucial for us to remember that, particularly in this political moment as the funding landscape around population health and well-being has really changed. Lower fertility rates, even with robust immigration, leads to aging populations, and countries are rightfully concerned about how to have a productive workforce to drive economic growth and adequate resources to care for a large proportion of older people. As population dynamics change, there's something broader at risk as well. My training is in political science, and as a student of history and politics, I know that what the government has as aims is not always perfectly aligned with what families and individuals have as aims. And that's not a criticism. I've actually been thinking about this a lot in the NGO sphere lately, as so many NGOs across the world have seen funding cut, and their leaders are having to decide how to balance keeping the business running and the impact with having to lay off staff. It is a difficult place to be for a leader of an NGO or a leader of a country. I don't think that we can overcome a government having a functionalist or instrumentalist view of population. And I'm sorry, I know anyone who invites me to speak knows I might not always say what you want to hear, but that's their labor base. And as we all know, a strong economy is what powers well-being. That's why we have sustainable development goals. I think we're going to have to think harder, this is a big challenge, about how societies meet their economic goals without putting the burden for carrying the economy on women. And that's what I see happening more and more. It's the responses to demographic shifts, not the shifts themselves, like those pressures I laid out that worry me the most. Women's labor force participation is seen as a key to economic growth, but so is their reproduction, and so is the unpaid care work that they do. As middle income and soon lower income countries chase a potential demographic dividend, they'll look to women as the cornerstone. Pushing women into the workforce, particularly mothers, without attendant structures to help them with care responsibilities, just trades one problem for another. In talks that I give, I often refer to this as a government goal to birth more, work more, and care more. One ministry will work on one thing, another ministry will work on another, and they cross each other out. And who, at the end of the day, feels the most pressure? The women who are being targeted in the first place. So we need better care systems to bring more women into the formal economy, because that's what women want. That's a key phrase. How do we make sure that these policies serve the needs of women and their families, not just public and private sector interests? I'm sorry to throw some of my economist friends under the bus, but some of them would say that the optimal outcome from an economic point of view would be to have high quality care available for anyone in society who needs it. Children, sick, people sick or with a disability, older people, so that a woman could work outside the house in a paid position and make sure that those care needs are done at home. That means that if I could make $10 an hour outside the home, and I could pay someone $5 an hour to do all the care work inside the home, that's an easy decision. But not all decisions are purely economic or so easy, particularly for the very poor women. We often hear stories about how women will really struggle to find a family member to care for her own children so that she can go work a low-paid job caring for someone else's children. From a numbers perspective, purely economically, that looks like it's working perfectly. But from a well-being perspective, I wonder how much that is the case. And I think those are the factors that are missing in our analysis around this. We have this very one-size-fits-all analysis because there's 8 billion people, and it's hard to have the types of nuances that we really need. So in the data space, how do we measure and account for those kinds of hidden inequality more along income lines? I think one big challenge is that we tend to look through an economic lens, but that's what governments are beholden to. Back to that dilemma. How do we overcome that? That's where I look to learn today from everyone here. So I've always said that the thing I love the most about demography is that it is a lens through which to view the world. Looking through this lens leads us to ask different questions than we might otherwise ask, to get different answers than we might otherwise have. It gives us a fuller, more comprehensive, more accurate view of the world. The same is true for gender. Employing a gendered lens, and in this case, I'm encouraging us to look at how different the experiences and opportunities of men and women are in a society. That's the right lens to look through when it comes to population issues. But there's a difference between seeing women as the cause and the solution to all of society's challenges, and centering instead their experiences. Seeing women as the cause and solution to population issues is about treating them instrumentally, which we don't want to do, a means to an end, rather than about understanding their experiences, how they face conflicting pressures at home, at work, and in the larger society. I'm very excited to continue to hear about priorities and concerns of the group convened today around these issues and how we can push to really have creative and nuanced solutions around this that will improve well-being and protect our rights and access. Thank you.
Jennifer, thank you so much for giving that in-depth exploration of the implications of these changing, realistically, demographic landscapes and the fertility transitions. But also, I really appreciated how you brought to the fore responses that we need to be taking seriously around unpaid care work, women's contribution in the workplace, their reproductive capacities, and how all of these come together to, as you said, birth more, work more, and care more. That was really brilliant. And how we ensure that they're really supported in this whole story of changing demographic landscapes. Well, thank you so much. And now I'd like to shift us to the next segment, which is really about getting into data and evidence that guides national policy decisions in practice, as well as practical approaches, including in the workplace, and key advocacy strategies, including for public engagement that we can use. So I invite now to the stage Veronica, Sahil, and Kemi to have a conversation about these issues. Great. I'm going to start with Veronica. There you are. Hi. Veronica Carrillo is the secretary from the technical secretary, and correct me if I'm not giving justice to your title, I apologize, at the National Council for Gender Equality in Ecuador's Ministry of Women and Human Rights. She leads efforts to assess gender policies and coordinate intersectoral initiatives. Her extensive background includes advising on gender equality programs, directing violence prevention strategies, and serving as a parliamentary advisor. Welcome. I'm going to introduce everyone and then we'll get into the conversation. Next, we have Sahil Tesfu, who is the Chief Strategy and Sustainability Officer at Esseti, a leading global hygiene and health company. Esseti has become a pioneer in advocating for policies that advance gender equality, women's health, and particularly menstrual health. So Sahil has a wealth of experience in strategy and business development and business transformation, and we're so delighted that you could join us. You're also a champion in the UNFPA Coalition for Reproductive Justice in Business. So what a wonderful opportunity to welcome you here to UNFPA. And then we have Kemi Akin-Federan, who is the lead of the Global Advocacy for Change Unit at FOS Feminista, a great partner of ours at UNFPA, a civil society organization that's doing wonderful work in reproductive justice and gender equality. So Kemi joined the organization as Chief Global Advocacy Officer to co-lead its advocacy efforts. A feminist thought leader and connector in women's sexual and reproductive justice movements, Kemi brings over 20 years of experience working with women's rights organizations, funds, and social justice movements across the world and including Africa. Welcome to all of you. So I will start with my first question, and it's going to go to Veronica. Veronica, how has Ecuador, if you could tell us, used population data to develop gender responsive development policies? And what insights can you share generally from your country and the work you've been doing connecting to this conversation?
Bueno, voy a hablar en español. Primero, antes que nada, agradecer por la presentación que has tenido hacia mi persona, igual hacia Ecuador. Agradecer a la señora Diane Keita, que es subdirectora ejecutiva de UNPA, como a los distinguidos ministros y ministras de Estado que se encuentran aquí, a los señores y señoras que están presentes, tanto de organizaciones internacionales como también de organizaciones sociales, y un poco para abordar justamente la problemática de Ecuador. Se data una importancia que hay en temas de la autonomía hacia la fertilidad y a la equidad de género sean parte de un debate público y de la formulación de políticas. En este diálogo vamos a analizar el el rol fundamental de los datos, de la investigación en la formulación de estrategias que eliminan barreras estructurales, como también permiten decisiones informadas sobre la salud sexual y reproductiva. La recopilación y el análisis de esta información desagregada por género son clave para comprender estas tendencias de fertilidad e identificar las desigualdades. Hay que retomar el concepto y el debate sobre el cambio demográfico, que es un fenómeno global impulsado por múltiples factores, que es el acceso a la educación, como los cambios de los roles de género y las políticas públicas. La recopilación de datos desagregados por género permiten comprender cómo estas variables impactan de manera diferenciada a mujeres y a personas gestantes. Desde una perspectiva nacional, el análisis sobre la data, la tasa de fecundidad, como la edad de maternidad y el uso de anticoncepción, resulta fundamental para el diseño de políticas públicas que garanticen el acceso a servicios de salud sexual y reproductiva. En Ecuador y en otros países de Latinoamérica, estas políticas deben abordarse desde las desigualdades estructurales para garantizar a todas las personas tengan el derecho a decidir sobre su cuerpo sin coerción ni barreras institucionales. Asimismo, el análisis de la realidad ecuatoriana nos muestra datos que demandan justamente una acción inmediata y de coordinación. La tasa de embarazo de adolescentes de 15 a 19 años alcanza al 42.8 por cada 1.000 adolescentes, reflejando la persistencia de barreras en el acceso a educación sexual integral y servicios de salud reproductiva. El grupo de niñas de 10 a 14 años, la tasa es de 2.0 por cada 1.000. Lo que evidencia casos de violencia sexual y embarazo forzado. El 53.1% de las adolescentes entre los 15 y 19 años han experimentado algún tipo de violencia de género, lo que impacta negativamente en su desarrollo personal, social y educativo. El Ecuador ha reafirmado su compromiso con la formulación de políticas públicas con perspectiva de género y basadas en evidencia, permitiendo el diseño y la implementación de estrategias orientadas hacia la reducción de desigualdades y la promoción del ejercicio pleno de sus derechos, a través de un análisis desagregado por género y el fortalecimiento de los mecanismos de monitoreo y evaluación. El país ha avanzado en la incorporación de enfoques inclusivos e interseccionales que corresponden a las diversas realidades de mujeres y niñas en su diversidad. En cumplimiento justo con sus compromisos constitucionales e internacionales en la igualdad de género, Ecuador ha desarrollado la Agenda Nacional para la Igualdad de Género, un instrumento de planificación que impulsa 48 propuestas de política y 532 lineamientos para fortalecer la equidad. Sus ejes claves incluyen el acceso a servicios de salud sexual y reproductiva con énfasis en poblaciones vulnerables, la prevención del embarazo en niñas y adolescentes mediante estrategias intersectoriales y la promoción de la corresponsabilidad en el hogar, fomentando la distribución equitativa de responsabilidad de cuidado y domésticas, que es un tema que lo abordamos netamente también en nuestro país. Desde Ecuador se ha desarrollado también una estrategia nacional en educación integral en la sexualidad, como una política fundamental para garantizar el acceso a una educación sexual con enfoque, equidad y derechos, con la meta de que para el 2030 el 39% de las instituciones educativas implementen educación integral en la sexualidad bajo estándares de calidad. La estrategia busca transformar patrones socioculturales que perpetúan la desigualdad y la violencia de género. También como tener claridad acerca de los protocolos que se tienen que establecer dentro de los ministerios para que las niñas puedan denunciar a tiempo y prevenir a tiempo la violencia que siguen ejerciéndose en sus lugares cercanos. A través de esta iniciativa también reforzamos el compromiso a la prevención del embarazo adolescente y a la erradicación de la violencia basada en género, garantizando que las niñas y adolescentes ejerzan sus derechos sexuales y reproductivos de manera libre e informada. También entendemos que la autonomía corporal enfrenta múltiples barreras que afectan especialmente a mujeres y niñas. La falta de accesos a salud sexual y reproductiva es una de las principales limitaciones reflejada en la alta tasa de embarazo adolescente, también como la violencia obstétrica que existen dentro de las instituciones de salud. La tasa específica de fecundidad, como se lo mencionó con anterioridad, nos hace dar cuenta de que de niñas entre los 15 a 19 años fue un 42.8% de nacidos vivos por cada 1.000 adolescentes en el 2023. Estas cifras evidencian una insuficiente cobertura de educación sexual y planificación familiar, lo que perpetúa ciclos de pobreza y desigualdad. Otra de las barreras significativas es la violencia de género que restringe el derecho a las mujeres a decidir sobre su propio cuerpo. Según la ENVIGMUM, que es la Encuesta Nacional sobre Relaciones Familiares y Violencia de Género, el 53.1% de las adolescentes de 15 a 19 años han sufrido algún tipo de violencia de género, ya sea física, psicológica, sexual o patrimonial. En agosto, entre el año de agosto del 2014 hasta el febrero del 2025, se registran 205 muertes violentas de niñas menores de 15 años, de las cuales 28 fueron femicidios. La falta de justicia, de protección frente a estas agresiones refuerzan la vulnerabilidad de las mujeres y limitan la autonomía, perpetuando un entorno de control y opresión sobre sus cuerpos y sobre sus decisiones. Para reducir esta problemática es importante también manifestar que Ecuador implementó la Política Nacional Interseccional de Prevención de Embarazo de Niñas y Adolescentes, llamada PIPENA, articulando esfuerzos entre el Ministerio de Salud Pública, Ministerios de Educación, Ministerios de Inclusión Económica y Social y el Ministerio de la Mujer y Derechos Humanos, con el apoyo de organismos internacionales como la UNFPA. Como resultado de estos esfuerzos, la tasa de fecundidad de adolescentes ha disminuido de 69.5 nacimientos por cada 1.000 adolescentes del 2018 a 42.8 en el 2023. Sin embargo, persisten desafíos en la erradicación de la violencia sexual y en la ampliación de los servicios de salud sexual y reproductiva para adolescentes. Factores claves como garantizar el bienestar y autonomía de niñas y adolescentes en el país son claros del eje focal de que esto sucede también en entornos cercanos a las niñas. En conclusión, la recopilación y el análisis de estos datos son herramientas fundamentales para el diseño de una política pública con enfoque de género, permitiendo comprender las tendencias demográficas y eliminar las barreras que limitan la autonomía corporal. La información basada en evidencia es clave para garantizar que cada persona pueda tomar decisiones informadas sobre su fertilidad en un entorno libre de discriminación y sin restricciones. El reto es claro: es fortalecer la producción, el acceso y el uso de datos rigurosos para consolidar la autonomía reproductiva como un derecho plenamente ejercido, asegurando que las políticas respondan de manera efectiva a las necesidades de la población y promuevan una sociedad mucho más equitativa. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Veronica. Data is fundamental to eliminate barriers to bodily autonomy. That's fantastic. I really like that. Thank you so much for sharing your experience from Ecuador. And again, bringing in so many aspects of centering women and making sure they have access to services, making sure they have access to, well, exercising their choices, right? At the end of the day, that's the common thread here. I now shift to Sahil, and I would love to ask you this question based on the great work that SCT is doing on workplace policies. So how have those workplace policies been most effective in supporting employees' fertility choices and care choices? And really, could you shed some light on how businesses can contribute to more gender equitable care systems? Thanks so much.
Thank you. And I would like to start by saying that I'm very grateful to be invited into this space to represent the private sector in this very important conversation, because I truly believe that the private sector can contribute here. It takes a multi-stakeholder effort, yes, from public stakeholder side, civil society, but the private sector can also play a role here. And at SCT, we would also really like to take over that responsibility, and we are taking over that responsibility that we think we can play for our 36,000 employees that we have across the world, but also by driving advocacy and awareness on the matter. So let me start with saying that. Now, when it comes to our approach to workplace policy that supports fertility and care choices of our employees, we root all of the activities that we do in our company purpose. And our company purpose is to break barriers to well-being. Well, if you want to be very technical about what a company purpose is, it's the reason why a company exists. So when you look up a company, I also advise you to look at the company purpose, because it tells you a lot about a company's roots, a company's ambitions, and also about how they most likely are going to approach topics like this. So our purpose is to break barriers to well-being. Of course, we do that for our consumers, for customers, for patients, for caregivers across the world as a global leading hygiene and health company. But we also do it for our 36,000 employees, who we refer to as our barrier breakers. Now, when it comes then to workplace policy, we try to take a holistic approach. So when we do workplace policies, we want to make sure that we cover physical, social, mental, financial, and career/purpose well-being of our employees. We also want to make sure that all of our activities are rooted in our what we consider to be a strong diversity, equity, and inclusion framework, which of course covers dimensions around gender, but also goes beyond that, covering age, different abilities, and also ethnicities. So everything we do, we always want to check whether it's in line with our ambition and our framework when it comes to DI. So then I said before, we're a global company, so we sell into 150 countries. We have 36,000 people in roughly 60 countries, and that imposes a little bit of a complexity to us as an organization. So of course, we are bound by laws in the countries that we operate in. We're also bound by the collective agreements that we have in the countries that we operate in, but we're of course also guided by our own ambitions. So now, of course, the minimum is that we need to meet laws and collective agreements that we make in the countries that we are in. But of course, also we need to be aware that since we are a global company, we also have global teams. So you might have someone being in a team sitting in Mexico, and the next person sits in Munich in Germany, and they of course also talk. Right? And they perceive themselves to be part of one team and one company. So that's the complexity that we have to deal with to make sure that the things that we're doing make sense from a policy, from a law perspective, but also from again, alignment perspective with our purpose and what we want to be as a company, and which also our employees are expecting rightfully. So what we then do is we look at our policy landscape, and we want to make sure that we have a couple of what we call flagship policies that we want to make available to everyone in the world, no matter where you are as an SAT barrier breaker. One of them, for example, is that we provide all of our employees 24/7 access to mental health support, and not just to them, but also to everyone who lives in their household, no matter what your relationship to that person is. So there's 24-hour access, which has been very well adopted and also very welcomed by our employees. We have then also, when it comes now particularly to the policies that we're talking about here today, adopted a couple of fertility and care policies, particularly then with regards to flexible working arrangements. We make sure that, beyond what is provided in the country that you live in, of course, always in alignment, depending on what role you have, we make sure that you can work flexibly. That can mean, of course, then home office work, but we also, since we're also a producing company, we have 72 manufacturing sites across the world. We're also trying to be as flexible as we can in our supply chain, and we're also experimenting right now with shift work flexibility in several countries across the world to make sure that also employees who work shifts in our factories and distribution centers can also have access to flexible work arrangements. We also provide fertility treatment related leaves that go beyond also what might be recommended from a doctor. We also provide adoption and adoption-related leave to the primary caregiver, no matter then in that case, of course, you weren't the one who gave birth, but still you have to take care of someone. So we make sure that that is possible. We also provide miscarriage-related leave, extra days, again, beyond what would be recommended by law, breastfeeding breaks, and we also provide medical guidance and care when it comes to menopause, because we sometimes talk a lot about fertility related to giving birth, but of course there is also other aspects later in life that also might be difficult for the ones who are affected. Now then, in countries like the US, very particularly now, given recent developments, we also are collaborating with a company called Maven, a startup that you might have heard about, to also provide our employees access to family planning and healthcare, as well as also we reimburse travel expenses that you might have to take reproductive care out of state, depending on where you live. Now, this is just a couple of things that we're doing. By all means, do I not say that we are perfect, because I said before, we have this challenge of global versus local. We're also still learning. We're very grateful to be a member of UNFPA's Coalition for Reproductive Justice in Business, because we can lead on matters where we feel like we have good ideas and good things in place, but we also really get access to a lot of other ideas of companies across the world that we're also very happy to look into and then also adopt where it makes sense.
fantastic, Sahil. Really, I couldn't have thought of a better speaker for this panel today, showing us the power of private sector and everything that's possible. You really cover so many different aspects of the life course, really. So thank you for sharing that experience. I'd now like to turn to civil society and a little bit of an exploration of how CSOs, activists, and community leaders can really mobilize support, but also shift public discourse. So Kemi, what effective community engagement strategies can help build support for rights-based approaches, including the diversity of families, while also amplifying the voices of affected communities and in demographic policy discussions?
No, thank you so much, Leila, and it's really a pleasure to be here and always being a great accomplice with UNFPA in different ways. So I think my work is very easy because I think a lot of the things that I would point to have also been spoken on in terms of the panel, but also in terms of our keynote speaker. But I wanted to talk about the importance of us really addressing and taking head on issues of narratives. I know that we might talk about the issues of, policy and programs, but we know how the impact of narratives can shape that as well, especially when we start to see the integration of issues related to democracy, the issues related to policymaking, et cetera, and governance. So what we have seen, and I'm sure you all have probably heard this, but one of the narratives that we've been seeing that has been gaining momentum is this issue of demographic winter. And that was something that was quite interesting to really think about because, as our keynote speaker had mentioned, every single country has different demographic trends going on right now. And we've seen more and more, especially in the global north and high income countries, that the terminology around demographic winter is gaining momentum. And it's actually being used as a tool for mobilizing, as a tool by actors and movements that are against rights, that are against gender equality, to mobilize the public to advance their narrative and to advance the vision of the world that they're trying to achieve. And I think it's extremely important for us to resist that. I want to particularly highlight one that I find quite, initially when you see it, you're like, okay, as a feminist organization, we celebrate choice. And whatever choice that is that a woman picks, if you choose to be a woman that wants to stay at home and care for your kids and homeschool, that's fine. If you want to be a woman that wants to be in the workplace and achieve and break the glass ceiling, that's fine. But we're seeing a momentum and a movement that is emerging from very interesting parts of the United States called the tradwife movement. I don't know how many of you have heard about the tradwife movement, and it's gaining a lot of momentum with young people. And so you have women that are rejecting the notion of an independent woman, rejecting the notion of women in the workplace, and in a way using social media as a way to put that narrative out there and to continue to call for women to take on their natural childbearing roles and responsibilities at the expense of choice. And really framing the work that we all do in terms of gender equality, in terms of reproductive rights, as being an opponent to choice. And giving this sense of that we are forcing things down people's throats and women and girls' throats. And I think it's very important for us to really remember that those kind of narratives are rooted in fear. And we have to reject those notions. It's rooted in a place in which, for example, women and girls are blamed, as we rightly shared, for the changes that we're seeing, and not recognizing that we have to continue to adapt, but keeping people's choice and autonomy at the center of this. And so it's really important for us to look at how, as civil society, as feminist movements, we continue to push to change those narratives, not just at the very high level, but also at the community level and the grassroots level, to really explain to people the importance of choice, of autonomy, and of justice in this entire conversation. And that includes really sharing for people to understand the wide variety of options that are available. We have to center family planning and contraception. We have to center access to legal and safe abortion. But we also have to center adoptive, positive, ethical adoption practices. We have to center reproductive, reproductive technologies and assisted reproductive processes as part of the continuum of care that is not just this two dichotomy of contraception and also access to safe abortion, which actually is the focus of these narratives to tear down access to those two particular key element of a reproductive justice framework and of reproductive rights. I also think it's extremely important for us to be able to continue to also engage in the conversation of care and the care systems and how this is extremely key in terms of the work that we're doing. And I'm excited that Mexico is going to host the next regional conference on women, which is going to focus on care. And we are seeing a lot more feminists being in that space and engaging with that conversation, the Global Alliance on Care as another space for us to continue to engage and to be able to push the agenda. But how do we also take that back into the grassroots and on the ground so that women and girls and gender diverse people understand the importance of this and really welcome the fact that even this the political declaration actively recognize the care system as a key component of achieving gender equality, even if we didn't have other important pieces around sexual and reproductive health and rights. And so I think we're going to continue to do that work. I'm really looking forward to the International Conference on Family Planning and really putting this issue there, because there needs to be more conversations between those of us that are working at movement level and demographers. How do we create space? And I was so grateful that FOS Feminista was able to work with UNFPA and send some of our partners to the Global Dialogue on Demography that the Deputy Executive Director had mentioned earlier. But we need to continue to have more spaces like that to be able to really be in the same room and to talk about the fact that we are not going to go back on the agenda that was achieved with ICPD and the Program of Action. Rights was put at the center. And so, yes, we are in a complex situation. And yes, we need to think about how we navigate these spaces, but we need to be very careful not to slip into pro-natalist, not to slip into actions that are really changing the world that we don't, or pushing or shaping a world that we don't want, a world that is not centered on plurality and diversity, but that is about singling out and homogeneity and things like that. So I think these are the things that we're reflecting on and really thinking about how to bring across several movements, across several spaces, so that we can actually push this agenda forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kemi. It's really important to hear about that cross movement building, and you talked about the women's movement really having more conversations with demographers, and that's exactly why we had this session today, really to start bringing those conversations to the global level. And we thought what an important moment during CSW. So thank you so much. Please help me in thanking our panelists with a round of applause. And now, before we close, we're a little bit over time, but I would like to invite a couple of special interventions that we have from the floor. And I invite here to the stage Ms. Tatiana Makura. I hope I've pronounced your name right. Minister responsible for gender equality, prevention of violence against women, and economic and political empowerment of the Republic of Serbia. Please go ahead. I will sit there. Thank you so much. And then I also want to invite and thank you to those who are staying on a few minutes longer. I want to invite Liza. Are you here? From the, wonderful. She's the program director. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, Liza Bulatali, you are the program director for the Fiji Women's Rights Movement. Thank you both so much, and we're glad we could hear your voices today. Minister, over to you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, I don't know who stayed here. Ladies and gentlemen, in the light of these global challenges, let me present you, in short, what's the practice that we use in Serbia. We live in a time of rapid demographic change where women around the world make decisions about parenthood aimed increasing economic and professional uncertainty. Financial security and stable employment are often key factors in the decision to start a family, and we are increasingly witnessing the trend of delaying parenthood due to unsure work contracts and other economic challenges. Aware of these challenges, Serbia has adopted a comprehensive set of very liberal measures to encourage childbirth and support women who wish to become mothers. We place special emphasis on medically assisted reproduction because we believe that every woman and every couple should have the right to parenthood without financial barriers. That is why the state fully covers an unlimited number of IVF attempts, removing one of the key obstacles that previously limited women and couples in achieving parenthood. In 2023 alone, Serbia conducted 11,000 IVF attempts. These numbers, combined with the fact that IVF procedures are paid by the Republic of Serbia up to 35 years of age for women, highlights the crucial role of the state in enabling women to take advantage of their biological readiness for motherhood while balancing it with professional responsibilities. This is one of the reasons why we can be enthusiastic about raising the birth fertility rate from 1.38 in 2007 to 1.62 in 2024. We are proud of these numbers, but also ready to work even harder to maintain the good rhythm of positive change we started. Supporting fertility is not just a demographic issue, it is a matter of women's right to make decisions about their lives and families in an environment where they feel secure and supported. Our task is to create a society where no woman has to choose between her career and motherhood, but can have both in a system that provides the necessary support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. And over to you. Yes, you have a microphone. Great.
Test. So I'll keep my comments very short because I don't want to be the person that stands between you and your lunch. As mentioned, my name is Lisa from the Fiji Women's Rights Movement. Thank you to UNFPA for giving us an opportunity to also make our contribution to something that's very important for us. So I'll just begin by saying that I'm not a statistician or a person that specializes in demography. But however, in the last several years with the organization that I work for, we've been kind of intentional about monitoring global and regional population trends and how it impacts women and marginalized groups. So I speak today from that and probably speak from my heart, and I'll hopefully contribute to some of the amazing comments from the speakers earlier on. So just 2 points. Although it's astonishing that women are able to live longer, and it's because of improved quality healthcare services, education, and a decline in fertility, for us, it also has its challenges. Global and regional statistics showing that there's a growing older population, and in the Pacific, the data also predicts that for us. And so one of the things that we've been really looking at from the Pacific, and I can speak from Fiji, is the reproductive rights of older women. Because if you look at the category of when you say reproductive age, it's between the ages of 15 and say 40, 45. But then there's a large majority of women beyond that age that are completely invisible when we're looking at commitment documents, when we're looking at, reproductive programs for women. it's that category of women that are completely invisible. And so I just wanted to bring that here as a young person, talking about like making sure that when we say reproductive rights and gender equality, that's the core of the conversation. It also includes older women that are completely invisible. So for us as an organization from Fiji, we're just trying to see how we could influence policy, law, and program interventions that cater to these groups of women that are completely invisible in the global agenda when it comes to SRHR. The next point that I wanted to say that if you see from like regional conversation and even global conversations, there's large, developed and developing region that are experiencing low fertility, and you would have had, a sense of the conversation today, because women are just refusing to have children. Now, this is obviously creating a new level of anxiety with world leaders because it affects productivity, resources, investments, and even power and controls. And in some countries, governments are introducing like incentives to get more women to have children. Now that brings into question things about women's choice, bodily autonomy, SRHR, and even threats of intimate partner violence, because some of the incentives that governments are introducing have cash things to it. So in the Pacific region, in our experience, looking at that, our culture, traditional norms, and religious values, is still a force that polices women. So while there are incentives, it's not the single agent that forces women to have more children. We still have those other components. And because religion, cultural norms, and values are so intertwined in our everyday living, it really impacts women and how they choose to live out their life. And right now, in a lot of the Pacific countries, we don't have comprehensive sexuality education in schools. And so it's no wonder if you take a look at some of our statistics from the region, teenage pregnancy is on the rise. And now even early forced child marriages is also on the rise in say, Fiji. And so for us, it's a completely new territory, not really new territory, but we're seeing how do we learn from other regional places and other countries, how they deal with like early forced child marriages, because now we're seeing that in say our mixed cluster surveys and the kinds of data that our Fiji Bureau of Statistics are putting out. And also, if you look at like some of our training programs that are coming out from the different ministries, they're really reinforcing the concept of a family, not families, or not looking at the diversity of what a family means. So it's not favorable situation for women. And so on paper, Pacific countries like Fiji, we look good on paper in terms of our commitments to gender equality. But in terms of implementation, it's obviously like a lot of other countries, it's not there. And then when you have a crisis like, climate crisis, it's just an added layer for women when they're trying to access SRHR services or even having a conversation about having children or not. So with all these different agents, government, culture, religion, they want women to have more children, but cannot safeguard their SRHR rights or have quality services or even have a holistic environment for women to be able to raise their children. So even if a woman starts having children, it'll take that woman a few years, it'll take that child, a few years to be able to contribute to labor productivity and contribute to nation building. So a large majority of that time, a woman has to bear the burden of unpaid care work to raise that child. So for us in the Pacific, we're seeing it's one thing to create incentives for women to have children, but the environment for women to have the children is not there. So just my last point, and I'll end, is one of the things that I always reflect on when I'm in spaces where we're talking about numbers and we're talking about, population trend is what is more like important, how many people that live in a country or region, or the actual people that live in these regions and territories, and the condition to which they live in. So demography, it's not just about numbers, but it's about people. So it's one thing to notice the trends, but making sure that we provide the conditions for people to be able to live, because I think the latter is more important than the former. So I'll end with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I think you took my concluding remarks, so that was perfect. I just wanted to end with that. Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Lisa, so much for being with us. That concludes our session today, but before we go, I want to extend my deepest appreciation to the governments of Armenia, Côte d'Ivoire, Ecuador, and Mexico for their leadership and commitment and being with us today, and of course, Serbia, thank you. And our keynote speaker, Jennifer, and our distinguished panelists, Kemi, Sahil, and Veronica, and a special thanks, huge, big thanks to our UNFPA team, without whom this could not have taken place. So really, thank you all so very much. So UNFPA will continue to champion evidence-based, gender-responsive, and transformative solutions, ensuring that demographic change is not just about macro-level population patterns and trends, but underpinned by, as all of our panelists have said today, justice, equality, and the right of every person to make choices about their lives. So thank you all so much. Hope you carry forward these messages in CSW and the Commission on Population and Development and throughout your advocacy spaces. Thank you all so much.